dug in with your audience, you have to find your audience, right? And so that the idea of, okay, I'm just going to add value. A lot of the, and I'm not like an expert on the algorithm, but a lot of the ways that the algorithm is able to direct people to you is to really kind of seeing your engagements and seeing how you're engaging with different accounts and what accounts you're, viewing the most, or what accounts that, you're commenting on and interacting with. And this kind of helps direct you to people, but also helps direct people to you, because then it's also sorting through what you're outputting. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, some people are going to be able to just be able to put their, their work out there, and people are going to gravitate towards it.
Right.
But I would always, side on the side of, well, I'm going to engage and really push towards my demographic, or who I'm trying to reach, and in some other tangible way. Like, we could be talking about just like commenting and reaching out to, people, or we could be talking about just like whenever you post, if somebody comments or likes it, like strike up a small conversation with that, person or that platform, or
that's the
something
worst.
like that.
It's like, yeah, I mean, if someone, if you post a piece of art, a piece of poem or whatever, and people comment, even just saying like, oh, like great or positive stuff, like the worst comment reply you can give is thanks. It's like, because it just kills the conversation. Like, where do you go from there? Like, there's no other place to go. It's literally like the worst comment you can go. Like, trying to find ways to engage that person, trying to be like, okay, well, like what struck out to you? How'd you find the piece? What types of writing are you interested in? The more you can learn, the more that you can, give back to that person, that same person later, or similar people like them. Yeah,
for sure.
But again, so this is just a quick update on the blog. So again, last week at this time we had about 6 views. This week, without super active posting, and again without really, I was reaching out to people again, and I was just asking them to give me a tip for a podcast episode I'm going to make in the future about how to grow on Medium. So I wasn't even directly engaging with their work, but we were still able to, 10 times our views over the span of less than a week, which is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
You know what else is really cool?
Ice smoothies. Winner. I thought I won.
Yeah. Get that. You get that one. So yes, all those things are cool. Yeah. Chapbooks. And one of the things we mentioned at the beginning, we actually made a chapbook together. Why did we make a chapbook together? What was the thinking behind that?
We had
the situation was
we had a show together. We were going to be doing a show together, and we were like, we want to be able to, like, when we did the show together, we wanted people to be able to take things home with them, right? That we performed. So yeah, we made like a chapbook.
Yep. So I think
Church of the Black Commons.
Yeah, and the chapbook. How did we basically just one collab. We just put poems together that we felt fitting of a theme, right? So it was a collab. Had poems from both of us. We put them together into like a Word doc or PDF. We went to FedEx Kinko's, and just printed out copies. There's all kinds of formatting things you can do. So this is the first thing, is that a lot of times you look at chapbook competitions, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But chapbooks, one of the first reasons why chapbooks can be really powerful for getting your work out there is that they don't necessarily have to take much. So for instance, you can compile your poems, go to a print shop. You can make a chapbook for I don't remember. It depends on length too, right? But in general, you can make a book for like $3.
Yeah, I mean,
depending on length.
I've seen some like for like $2.75 for like a good quality, like a fair quality. It doesn't have to be incredible quality, but like something with fair quality, something that if somebody buys it, they don't feel like they're just buying like a whole bunch of sheets of paper, or if they feel like they're buying an actual production, like some book, some production went into it. So yeah, about $2.75, $2.50, and this is probably like last year, so maybe it's costs a lot more now.
Press papers and stuff like that, but yeah, so just so you know, so you're able to kind of get something. I mean, honestly, even if the thing costs, you know, $5 or $7, you know, but you charge $10, $11, things like that, depending on what the thing is. I mean, that's not horrible,
Yeah.
you know. Um, the nice thing about doing it on your own is that you get a lot more control over quantity and things like that. You might not necessarily feel that sometimes, like if you win like a prize, things like that, you might kind of feel pressure to go like, I need to get the book out, I need to get the book out. Whereas this, for better or for worse, you feel like you have a lot more control over the supply. So I think it can also make it less daunting. Like if you get like 500 chapbooks, but you only sell 10, like, you know, even if you didn't pay for them, like, what am I? I've got 490 chapbooks in my basement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's also like, I mean, and again, so and this is if somebody is looking to make poetry into something that is sustainable, then we probably shouldn't be thinking, oh, we're only going to be using these at one event, right? So you should also, you know, and I know we might talk about, might elaborate on this a little bit more, but you know, I would say when you go to an open mic, right, make sure that you throw on there, hey, I have a chat, like, well, if they allow you to sell your chapbooks in there, either way, I would still mention like, hey, I have a chapbook, and then people can always approach you, but that way, you know, you would, typically the more that you have printed, the less you get a little bit of a deal.
Yeah,
the more that you have printed. So I would just say, like, you know, print however much that you believe that you would have the energy and focus to sell, you know what I mean, and you then just be selling all the time, because you know, you never know when you're going to be in a situation where you could probably, you know, sell a couple chapbooks. Actually, so this is back when I had a hairline, right? Like years ago, I had released I did a chapbook, and I had a show that night, which is the reason why I had the chapbooks. I had a feature at this show called The Nest. Shout out if you guys know The Nest out there. Yeah. So I had a feature at The Nest, and so essentially I had made this chapbook, but I went to the barbershop before, and when I go to the barbershop before, I'm just like having conversations with people at the barbershop, like, yeah, I'm like, you know, I'm getting cleaned up, you know, I got a show later on, and they're like, oh yeah, like, yo, you got a book? So I saw like 4 books right there at the barbershop. Now I didn't get a free cut, which, you know,
but did they buy your mixtape?
No, I couldn't get that off, man. It was too it's too normal. Everybody's like, they're expecting a mixtape. They weren't expecting
that's the yeah.
But which is just to say that, yeah, like, keep them on you, because you never know. Like, people love hearing, oh, you're a poet. Oh, that's dope. Now, like, you know, people depending on the situation,
people like the idea. People like the idea of poetry.
Start pressuring people, like somebody like, oh, you're a poet. That's cool. Yeah, you're gonna buy a book, huh? And then just shake your head with it.
Yeah,
just see what they do.
And I think, yeah, it's just nice to always have something that you're prepared with. I think if you we're not here to necessarily talk about formatting and things like that. Although you can Google that. Just Google how to make a chapbook at home. There's basically, even like using Microsoft Word, there's formats you can use or even download that pretty much you just have to input the poems.
There's websites that you can go to. If you just go to
nowadays,
if you go to just like websites and just search like chapbook template website, there's like websites that'll literally just you can actually go to your Google Docs and then just copy the link from your Google Doc into the thing, and then it'll take a second. It takes like 3 minutes, and it's like there's a little thing we're loading up, and then it'll push them all like kind of in the most conventional way that it can, and then you kind of go through and make kind of the smaller edits, and it typically does a pretty good job. I would say, like, you know, especially if you're wanting to make your poems stand out and you want to make your book stand out, then I would like individually go to each one and make sure it's formatted in the way that you want the poem to be read.
Yes.
So that and try to make it somewhat like as interesting. I mean, try to make it interesting. Try to make your work interesting, right? So like, I don't want to be like try to make it interesting for this book, like for at least this one time. But yeah, it's always good to, you know, have your book and have your chapbook kind of stand out even in the formatting.
I would also say if you do get your chapbook printed, I would definitely recommend that the cover page, if you're going to a traditional printer like Kinko's, cardstock for the cover. Don't just use traditional paper. It's going to get all kinds of torn up. And most likely they'll, you know, the people that work there are also knowledgeable, so you can ask for their opinion too, and they'll generally be able to guide you if you describe what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, I think, it's like cardstock makes it feel like you're actually handling a book. And so even more than just the protection that you're going to get because of the cardstock, I think when people are looking at your books, they want to feel like they're buying something, that's
Mhm.
they're going to, because even think about the what's going to happen with this book when it leaves you. Is it going to go into the person's car? Is it going to go into this person's bag? Is it going to go into this person's bookshelf? And I can guarantee you that, people really want to see, you know cards, like, well, they want to see like the books on the bookshelf.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Now, other reasons why I think chapbooks are super, super, super valuable for poets are that in publishing they're kind of a cheat code, because in the traditional publishing works like this: like you submit a poem, the poem gets published. In general, no other journal wants to publish that. No one wants to touch that poem again, because it's like it's tainted. It's already published. It's like we want
ew.
we want pure.
Get this poem away from me. Get this pre-poem
Right?
away from me.
And so chapbooks can break that, because chapbooks can take those published poems, and I'm thinking now less of the homemade chapbooks and more of the published, like competitions and things like that. So chapbooks will allow you to take typically poems you've already published. Okay, you can include a little acknowledgments page to indicate where the poems originally appeared, some in earlier versions. And then you can publish that chapbook full of poems you've already published. And in some ways, that really helps with also developing those connections, because now you have a connection not only with your chapbook publisher, but then you also have a connection with all the different editors of the journals where your poems were published. And this is developing your professional network in the poetry world. So and when that chapbook comes out, you can reach out to those editors where those poems originally appeared, be like, hey guys, thank you so much again for publishing my work. I'm excited to tell you that it's now appearing in this chapbook. And then the other reason that this can build further is that so that the chapbook appears, and in general, you don't take poems from a chapbook and then put them in another chapbook. Usually that doesn't occur. Okay. Because again, those poems are no longer pure again. The same issue. But once you get ready to do a full length, well, now you can then take the poems that have been published in journals and then were published in a chapbook, and then you can take those poems again and get them published in the full length collection. So you're able to kind of triple dip with the poems. So you get them individually, you get them in the chapbook, and then you take the chapbook poems and get them in the full length collection, and everyone's happy.
Yeah. And I think one of the, and this is just as somebody who goes to a lot of open mics, goes to a lot of poetry shows, having that poetry, having that chapbook from an artist it's really impactful, because it's almost like a business card, but like it's a way of like kind of leaving your mark like in the city. And again, this is if you're somebody that's interested in really like either traveling or doing poems professionally, or doing poems like in multiple places, and like kind of creating a career out of it. Somebody really loving your poems, that's one thing, and that's always good, and that's the best thing, right? Somebody being like, I really, really love your poems. But somebody loving your poems and having their chapbook in their hand, or having your chapbook at home, and being able to be like, well, there might be an opportunity that comes around, and it might be hard to be like, man, that one guy that came through a couple months ago, he was really good, but like maybe you don't even think about it, but that chapbook that you have on your desk, and you're like, hey, this guy is a good guy to kind of bring in. Like, actually, I got like 4 gigs cut this was again years ago, but I got like 4 gigs off of like one of the chapbooks. I had like a vending machine chapbook, and like literally like somebody like reached out to me. They were just like, yeah, like I read this piece, and I want to be clear, so I wrote a chapbook, and it's legitimately about a vending machine. And when I say it's about a vending machine, I'm like, the front cover was a vending machine, and all the poems were related to like vending machine stuff.
I remember this book. I don't know if I have it, but I remember.
It was yeah, but there's actually no real deeper meaning. It's legitimately like I really wanted to like sign filled this thing up. Like there's like no deeper meaning. It's just but like people would reach out to me. They're just like, wow. They're like, I understand what you're getting at here. I'm like, do you? Because I fill me in.
I feel seen.
But yeah, no, like, and like I didn't really expect to get like any, like I literally I wrote the chapbook in like 4 days, right? Like that's not advice. That's not advice.
Like, oh
But yeah, I wrote the chapbook in like 4 days. Where I guess I finished those poems in like 4 days because like ahead of my show, so I can have 2 books to sell instead of one. And people, again, the to be clear, the first chapbook was like the one that was like my heart and soul, right? I'm like, okay, well, let me bare my heart and soul. And the second one was like the vending machine one, and I got like bookings off of like the vending machine one, and not the one where I'm like, please listen to my heart, people. So yeah, it's just to say that you never know what is going to strike with who, and having chapbooks, having a product that you can actually give to somebody that's a product of your work. So like a lot of poets, they have other things, that have other merch, that have pins and stuff like that, and that's all that stuff is cool. Like there's nothing wrong with those things, but I think chapbooks are really special because chapbooks are kind of taking a piece of that poet with you, but then also being able to reference it if later on down the line, if you could use a poet for things. It's like I have a chapbook from somebody who I really like.
Yeah. No, that networking aspect is really key. It's tricky. I mean, chapbooks don't necessarily get the same level of prestige as like a full length, but it's still better than nothing. Like there's no reason, like if you have a feature, you could make a chapbook of all the poems that you plan on reading that you could then sell afterwards. Having just something where people can remember the event by, I think is something that's really beneficial. It's not something I tap into enough when I do readings, but it's why not? You can get your reading fee, but then you could also add on a couple of sales, and then on top of that, like it's just another opportunity for people to connect with your work. Because a lot of times with readings, I don't know about you, but like I always do better like having the page and being able to read the page. Like I like listening to poem, but I always get more when I'm actually able to kind of read and see what's going on with the text. So sometimes that's nice to have that guide.
Yeah, I mean, I think it maybe depends on the poem for me. There's like there's different poems that I think I get a lot more out of like performing without the paper, without anything, but primarily because it allows me to use both hands, and I think that there's like a lot to do with your hands and some of the work that I like, and some of the work that I have.
I'm thinking more from a reader's perspective than a performer.
Yeah, no. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Just like, but an idea. And I'm gonna give you guys this idea for free. I'm not even gonna charge you for this idea, but an idea that I had when I actually did my I had a feature in Dayton, like this was 2017 or 18. 2017, actually. Yeah, I had this feature in Dayton, and I actually set up my feature set. So I actually did exactly that. Like the poems that I was doing are like all the poems that were in the chapbook, and I actually set it up like a play. And I was like,
that's cool.
Like, and in that way, it could be like, in order to get this playbill, like you have like that's going to cost you, right? And so then it just kind of set up like where there was like a really natural connection between what I was doing on stage and the product that I was selling. Because then it's like, okay, selling the chapbook is like it's good, but it's like if I'm just selling the chapbook of all the things that I'm doing right now and only things I'm doing right now, then there has to be some reason that some connectivity to them, or some like connective tissue that's like, oh, this is this, and so this is part of the experience, and not just part of the experience in that I've listened to it, but it's also part of the experience. Like when I leave a play, I have listened to the play, but I also have the playbill, and I'm like, oh, that's how I'm gonna remember. That's how I'm gonna like be able to reference this stuff back. So that's an idea for free. I didn't even charge you guys for that. So that just means you have to share. You have to share the video to your friends and your cousins and your play cousins.
That's true.
Even them, they deserve to hear that. No, not Ken though. if you're out there, don't. He doesn't
Dad?
deserve. Dad. He doesn't deserve it.
I like that idea again because again it ties into the experience. So suddenly having that chapbook and be able to give that chapbook to someone that's linked to a reading. Again, there's it's the poems, but it's also the way the memory works. Language teacher mode kind of entering. So like with like vocabulary, if you're trying to learn a new word, like you ever tried to like learn a word like in another language and like you just keep forgetting it like over and over
I
again.
keep forgetting words in this language.
Well, it can work for this too. So, that's usually a sign of that you just don't have enough connections with the word. There's just not enough associations. Like the more associations you have with something, the more evocative it is. Like if you can like smell a word, if you can taste a word, if you can visualize a word, if you can get an idea what it feels like if you touch it or the emotion it brings you, it's much harder to forget that word.
Yeah.
And I think that we're almost attaching all of those sorts of emotions and experiences onto the chapbook itself. Like suddenly the chapbook isn't just the chapbook. The chapbook is that experience that I attended, like made manifest into this thing I'm holding through my hands. You know what I mean?
I actually got a story. So like there's this artist, he's a poet. He actually just recently passed. His name is Oz. And man, okay, so here's the thing. I've only ever seen this poet perform the like in real life one time in my entire life, right? And it was at Scott's show. Shout out to Writer's Block. Shout out to like, all the Writer Block family. Man, when I tell you, and like I still have this chapbook to this day, Doors. Like there is this poem called Guardian of Bicycling Mermaids. And this is like a perfect kind of example of I think seeing a poem and that like I saw him perform the poem and it changed my entire perspective on poetry. And this was fairly early on in my, in going out to poetry shows. I think at this point I had not even had like a feature, you know what I mean? Like, so at this point I was really, really new to the poetry scene in Columbus. And this was the first feature that I saw there. And man, it's such a, okay. Like he if you, it's really hard to describe that performance, those performances, because it was a feature set, right? So it's really hard to really kind of put into words the thing that he was doing on stage, because it's not the thing that I do. I have no idea. Like if what he's doing is poetry, I don't know what I did. I don't know what the thing that I was doing was, right? And so, I mean, it's just watching this performance, but he performed this poem, Guardian of Bicycling Mermaids. And I remember when I saw him perform that poem, I had decided, in my budget decided that whatever he has to sell, I need it. Like I absolutely need it. Right. And so he had this chapbook, and I didn't bring the chapbook with me, but I have a picture of it. I don't know. I don't know why I'm showing it to the camera. But yeah, so I had I bought the chapbook, and when I I read the chapbook like 1,000 times, but like legitimately every time like somebody talks to me about poems, or like actually funny story, like I've had this poem, I've had this book longer than I've like known my wife. And it's so funny because she actually asked like to borrow the book one time, and I'm like and I remember this like fairly early on in a relationship, and I was like, I can't do it. Like I can't trust it. And it's really hard for me to let it go now. She she was like going out of town or something, like for something. She was just like, yeah, I kind of want to like take us up chapbooks. I was like, you can't take that out of the state. I can't allow it to happen. But yeah, nah, it was just, again, incredibly impactful artist. Like, again, I've only ever seen him in real life perform like that one time. And when I tell you that it's easily, I'm not even, man, like, yeah, the best performance I've ever seen of a poet in my entire life. Like there's other poets, there's other stuff that I've really really loved, and I really really like, but it's like that at that time, what that set did and what that poem did to me as a writer and a performer and just a person, like it really transcends anything that I can really kind of per- optimally describe to you. But I was able to walk away from that space with this chapbook, and yeah, it's just like this idea that like the shape that that performance took, now that I have this chapbook, what, like, you know, the next day it's like that performance became even more special when I can actually watch, like, and listen to it in my head, and I can have this book in my hands. And so like that's the kind of and I mean, I don't know, it's going to be hard to ever attain that kind of resonance, because it's going to be hard for any mortal person to like really perform to that degree or to that level. But just that feeling of, hey, I walked away from this poetry performance that I really enjoyed, and I really liked this artist, and now I have this book that, you know,
it transports you back
3 weeks from now, a month from now, again, years, it's like been like a decade since I got this book, and like legitimately every time I read that poem, it's like I'm right there sitting in the like the close to the back next to the trash can, watching this poem, this artist like perform. So
I think that really speaks to the value of having something like that attached to your features as well, because if you just found the book by itself and you didn't have that not to say that it wouldn't have moved you, but it sounds like it would have lost, the impact might not have been the same.
Yeah, you wouldn't have that additional component of, because again, just what you're talking about when it comes to like where you're bringing all those senses together, right? So you know, not only do I, because like the strongest sense that you can have is like memory, right? So now it's like I have this physical copy of this physical book, but the thing that happens when I'm reading the book is all memory. I'm able to really hear his voice performing this poem. And again, I can read the poems, but I can't like I can't do the thing that he does when he's performing the poem. So yeah.
I mean, it allows you
creating those special moments.
Yeah, it allows you to return back to the headspace you were in. Because I mean, there's even a chance that if you were to see him, like let's say you hadn't seen that, but you saw him read the poem like last year at a different event, there's a chance that the impact wouldn't have even been the same, because it wasn't the same. You weren't at the same stage in your poetry. Like, you know, that's not to say the poem wouldn't be impactful, but it's,
to be clear, I want to be clear. Like, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right about like, you know, like really anything, because it's like, you know, the further that you are from, you know, I was really new. I was performing terrible. I want to be clear. I was a terrible poet. Okay. Like if I had to sit through a set of the poems that I had back then, right now, I would hate it. Okay. So I've arguably gotten better. Like I would imagine. But yeah, but just to say that, like, yeah, that was an incredible set. He was a powerhouse. And Jesus, like there's not a lot of artists that I can legitimately say like I've been to concerts that I've been like, yeah, I can you'd have to kind of bring that event to memory or something like that. Like I remember the shirt I was wearing. I remember the pants that I was wearing. I remember like what the weather was outside. I remember all the things from that, how crazy impactful that performance was, and how colorful and dynamic that performance was. And then like everything is crystallized with this book that I have forever, right? So, you know, whether, you know, if you release chapbooks and you kind of do stuff and you kind of do this stuff, you know, repetitively, you'll kind of get to a point where like maybe years from now somebody will be like, yeah, I still got that, I still have that book, you know, and you'll kind of be able to create those memories. But it's also kind of creating a reputation, and it's like, you know, kind of creating a following that can kind of precede you, because now people maybe have heard about you because people in that area have bought your book, or maybe your book is available, or maybe you're, you know, people are shouting your praises over there. So now when you come, it's like they have to get their own, or they have to like really be able to see your performances. So yeah, creating a lineage of product that is attached to your work is always, I think there's not a negative drawback to that, unless you drastically change like the kind of person who you are, and you're like, man, I hate what I was doing before, maybe, but who knows?
It's interesting to say that too, because in some ways, having the book for this experience that you were describing, having the book enhanced your experience in a lot of ways, because it's allowing you to relive it. It adds on to it. So in some ways, I think we could take it a step further and say by having a feature where you don't have something like this, where you don't have something tangible that your audience can leave with. In a lot of ways, it's not even about the book. It's more like a totem. It's more like a representation that you take back from the reading. And by not giving them that, in some ways, it's not fair to them. That you're removing part of what the experience of your reading could be.
Yeah.
You're stop being selfish.
You're taking away an entire dimension away from the experience. I'd almost liken it to, like, there's chefs out there that can make incredible food, like the best tasting food that you ever have had in your entire life. And maybe they could make that food without making the food look particularly great at all. Like, maybe it just looks like a bowl of whatever. And maybe that's an amazing dish. But imagine if you just took that next step and you said, well, okay, not only are you going to have this incredible dish, but you're going to present it in this really beautiful fashion. You've plated it incredibly well. Now you added another dimension to like this experience. But then imagine if you did all that, and then for all the dishes that you prepared, you added a little menu book or a little cookbook next to it that was like, you want to know how to prepare this meal? Like, here's a cookbook. Now it's like, every time I look at that cookbook, I might not go to your restaurant like every single night. Maybe your restaurant costs $1 million or whatever. Like, maybe you're like, they're really, really accomplished. Maybe you're not like super accomplished, but maybe you're not going to go to that restaurant all the time, or maybe they're not going to be around to go to the restaurant all the time. But they'll always have maybe this little, maybe it's a souvenir, maybe it's like, oh, let me give it a shot. But they're not going to do it the same or as well as you. Maybe they're not going to have the kind of ingredients or whatever the situation is. I don't know. I'm telling chefs how to do their job. But yeah, it's just like this idea that now you have this additional dimension to this experience.
Yeah. I think we talked a lot about, like, things to consider, reasons to make a chapbook. Yeah. We talked a little bit about the publication arm. Another reason too, speaking of publications, is that chapbook contests tend to be cheaper than full length contests, and a lot of people do contests and things like that. So the contests, and there's lots of big ones, like there's Bull City has theirs. There's I always mispronounce it. It's like Black St. Lawrence. They have theirs. There's Two Sylvias and things like that. A lot of places have very notable chapbook competitions that are certainly worth looking into. So again, it's a way to kind of start building up that credential. It's something you could put on your writing resume, especially if you want a contest. It's a way to start building up that audience. Let's talk about, in terms of structure for the chapbook. So if you're organizing a chapbook, and this is something actually I had posted on Threads, so that's the platform we're most active on, is Threads. So I kind of want to just share some insights from some people that were discussing chapbooks themselves. Give me one moment. Let us see. All right. So you can see, I asked people, if you had to give advice for a chapbook, what would you say? And this was one. So we're talking about it's helpful to find a theme and play around with it. And this is a big question I think comes up with chapbooks a lot, is about, and also full-length collections too. How do you organize it? Are you organizing it by, I'm just going to pick my best poems and throw them together into a book? Kind of like making like a greatest hits album? Or do you go to thematic approach? And that's kind of, so it seems like here. So G. Mostowski, sorry if I mispronounced your name. So this is what we had here. what are your personal thoughts on this, Matthias? Do you think, are you compiling your best poems together, or are you thinking more
Thematic route all the way.
thematic? Why thematic?
I think that I I think about what I would want from like an experience, right? So and I view the entirety of the chapbook as an experience. And so let's think about it in terms of like if you're watching this unfold like a story. Like, do I want to see a whole bunch of really small sketches of, maybe they're great, you know what I mean, but like maybe I'm not able to see anything kind of fully fleshed out. I'm not able to see kind of the rises and fall. I'm not able to really kind of experience all the things that are happening through the trajectory of somebody's life, or what the trajectory of the experience that's happening in the chapbook. I'm just getting a whole bunch of these kind of like, this is a really great poem that I wrote, this is also a really great poem that I wrote, this is also a really great poem that I wrote, which I would agree, like, your poems, all you should aim for a level of excellence when it comes to like the writing in your poems. You know what I mean? So like, that's not me saying like, oh, your poem shouldn't be good, but it's just to say that it's just to say that like, I think as an experience, as something that I'm watching or I'm reading, then what I want from it is to feel resonance at the end. And I'm not going to feel that with just all your greatest hits. You know what I mean? If you give me your theme and you give me your character growing and you giving me your character going through an experience, your character making good decisions, bad decisions, whatever is happening in this character's life that's making me interested in that one character. And then at the end, whatever, maybe it's a good and maybe it's a bad thing. Who the heck knows? But it's like, now I have like a feeling of, completion at the end of this experience that I'm not going to necessarily have if I have a whole bunch of disconnected, disjointed, great poems. So I go the thematic route. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think just from working with, larger name, like I know, like working with like Vivy Francis, working with like talking with like Tim Jess and like other people, like it seems like the project based route is the one that's more frequent among, especially like your bigger name poets. It's when they're making poems, a lot of times they already have in mind that, oh, this poem is going to fit into this suite of poems. There's a strategy involved. Every poem that I'm writing is fitting, is another piece to the puzzle that is going to be the entire chapbook or going to be the entire full length. And I think that, again, if you just have the best poems, people are drawn to story. People are drawn, it's just part of human nature. People are looking for something that is taking them from one place to the next. We're trying to see development, we're trying to see change. And I think that if you just have like best poem, like one poem's about like an ode to spaghetti, and then your next poem is about how your grandfather passed away, and then the next poem is about a leaf. Like this is, there are ways that those can be tied together, but it's like,
in all fairness, my ode to my grandfather is my ode to spaghetti poem. So
your grandfather was
yeah, I have very interesting origins. Shout out to Grandpa Spaghetti. I call him Pusketty.
You're very strong Italian.
Mamma mia!
It's just hard to put that together with the best poems. A lot of times, like the best poems, I think, like in isolation, the best poems can work, but sometimes like putting all those together, just kind of lose cohesion. Like it's even like in the same with like music, like best of albums a lot of times are not the best albums by the artists, because it's just a lot of times like the music was put together, especially in the old days, like they were put together for a theme. Yeah,
I would even say like one of the ideas that I think oh man, was it Omari? I think it might have been Omari, but it might have been somebody else. I can't remember who it was. This was years ago. But we were talking about like when people put together chapbooks, and he was just like, I take one of my best poems that I've written that people really love and they recognize, and I typically try to work on a suite of poems that are in that either genre or has some kind of resonance with that topic.
Some kind of vein.
And maybe they're kind of like they're disconnected by a lot of different factors that make them different poems, but that way you can kind of sell it as like, you know, these are the kind of poems that these are, right? So I to use, even I'll take myself for example, like I have a poem called like Kobe that people like really love that poem. So if I was going to say, okay, well, I can take that poem and I can put it into a suite of poems that are kind of about like just growing up in my neighborhood, right? And it has some like it's like interconnected by way of, you know, Kobe is about like kind of grow up in an aspect of growing up in my neighborhood, but there's other aspects of growing up in my neighborhood, so I can package that poem inside of and that way I can say I can sell it like, you know, Kobe's in this book, you know what I mean? So like, if you want to buy Kobe as a poem, like it's in this book, but you're gonna get these other poems.
I think it's for strategy. If you make your own chapbooks, that can be a lot easier too, because then you can understand. You don't have to worry about the publication issues because you can kind of just mix and match your own poems as you wish. Just checking the chat really quick. We have Kadimi. Thanks for stopping by. They wrote a poem telling that no one likes nature and poetry anymore.
What is the poem? What has the force done for me lately?
I was saying I wrote 2 poetry books on Kindle after 2 years, sold none. I mean, how are you getting your books out there? Was that the goal to sell them, or was your goal just to do it? Like, what I need to know more about what the goal was when putting them onto Kindle. I'm kind of curious. I have a lot of questions about that now. Why wait to see? Don't forget a response there. I want to go back to some of the tips again. So we have Jim Mostowski's. Again, talking about themes, talking about collection they have related to the moon in like different lunar phases. That's an interesting idea. And then a nobody poet again. It was great to see them. They made a suggestion to make your chapbook view it kind of like a story. Okay. And then leave the person wanting more. I mean, of course, makes a lot of sense to me. I did ask them to elaborate a little bit. So this will do.
Which, ironically enough, that comment made you want more.
It's true. Yeah. Digging. By the way, this also speaks to the comment strategy too. Again, when someone comments on your stuff, like trying to elaborate and get people to push a little bit more. Some people will, some people won't.
And nobody poet is like, that was a strategy. Thought you were interested.
No, but I am.
No, Jeff. Good stuff.
So, like, because I mean, so one of the things here, so like they said, like make it a story and just kind of give it, and that's the thing I think I see a lot with comments. Like a lot of times people leave a quick comment, but they don't necessarily give a whole lot of detail.
Yeah,
and I don't know. It's like if someone's leaving a comment, like it's like just something quick, like make it a story. I mean, it's one of those things like you hear and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, cool. But then it's like one of those things that like I start thinking about, like what does that actually mean? What does that look like? Yeah. You know what I mean? So that was kind of the thought process here. And so then we see a lot of ways to frame a story out of poetry. It starts with a theme, kind of like we've been talking about. And then move to outlining. And I was really curious about this part. Moving to outline into poetry isn't story based. So, for instance, comparing an epic poem like Dante. To give an example,
Dante's Inferno.
That's how I interpreted that.
Okay.
Which I thought has a narrative to it, though. But
I was like,
moving through the cycles. But I might be missing. Maybe it's more about other poems by Dante. But my most recent chapbook center around the axe cutter character from the Little Red Riding Hood. Is axe cutter? Is that the hunter that kills the wolf, or is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. The
axe cutter, but
yeah, the axe cutter. I thought it was like a.
Is that his name?
I don't know. I'm really curious now. I'm invested. I want to learn more about this axe cutter, and apparently this chapbook can help me.
For some reason, in my head, I hear the word axe cutter. I'm thinking like somebody that's like they exclusively cut axes,
like a kind of like sharpening, no, like a blacksmith kind of thing.
No, but he's not even like sharpening axe because he's like cutting. Like he sees an axe and he's like, I gotta chop that in half.
I use an axe on the axe kind of thing.
We just Axe body spray. What's that smell? Is that Mountain Spring? Ah.
But the key thing here they mentioned is that the key is to frame your work in a way that flows. And I think that's really key. I would agree with that. Again, I think people are drawn to narratives. I think people are drawn to stories. So like that's not to say that every poem necessarily has to have like the same characters and stuff like that, but working with that sort of progression. And we can see other interpretations too. PK Boys with Zaid. Hi. I saw in the eyes of poor child. For the axe cutter? I need more context for that comment. Because that could have been from a minute ago. So feel free to elaborate. What did you see?
That's like a hostage taker's note, like to us. They're trying to get us a message. What is the ransom?
So we'd love to know your thoughts, guys. If you have experience with chapbooks, let me know. I have a very painful experience with chapbooks. There was a manuscript. This is back when I was submitting. This is a sad story. So.
Oh no.
So I got a chapbook I was doing different contests. I forget if it was Bull City. It might have been Bull City. When Boat was open, they had a chapbook contest. Or may have been one other one. And Tiana Clark was the judge.
Okay.
And my chapbook was a finalist for two different competitions that Tiana Clark was judging for both of them. And she rejected it twice.
Oh no!
Like she rejected the first one. I was like, oh.
She did the first one, and then she was just shooting in rhythm on the second one. That's bad.
As soon as I saw she was the judge for the second one, I was like, oh well, I'm probably not gonna win this one either, and it didn't happen. But it's like, cool. I mean, hey, honorable mention, finalist, great job. But,
there you go.
Yeah, Tiana Clark wasn't feeling that collection. I don't know what that means.
I'm a little that's adding some validity to the kidnapper that I didn't want the validity to be added to. I don't think.
Yeah.
All right. Keep it PG in the comment section, guys. Just say that's a poem so we can feel a little bit more comfortable with it.
So just a quick recap of some of the things that we talked about today with regards to creating your own chapbooks. Feel free to jump in at any moment, but chapbooks, we think they're super valuable tools for poets because they don't have the same kind of high stakes that a full-length collection does. They're manageable. You can make your own, and honestly, you can make your own pretty cheaply. You can get a chapbook produced, like one copy of your chapbook for under $5, which you can then move to sell. And you can just print those off at your local print shop, things like that. Chapbooks are nice because they give you multiple opportunities for publication. So for instance, you get individual poems published. You can get those individual poems then put into your chapbook, and then you can get that chapbook, all the poems from that, into a full-length collection. So you're basically the same poem you're able to get published in 3 different forms. In addition to that, it's a way to, for instance, if you have a feature, some sort of reading, the chapbook is a great kind of memento. It's just a nice, I don't want to say souvenir, but it's a nice way for people who attended to reflect on what they saw with you, the experience you gave them, the memories they have. Yeah. And additionally,
and also, I mean, when it comes to just having something that's a representation of you as an artist in places that you're not, you know what I mean, that you can't really speak up for yourself. If there's a room and somebody is there discussing, man, we want to bring an artist in for this reason, or we want to send an artist here for whatever the reason may be, being able to have something in somebody's hands that's in that room, would be really, really helpful and really, really resourceful. And I mean, naturally coupled with, something that we also talk about when it comes to having your own poetry content, and things like that, coupling those two things together can really be some great use. Because again, you have something that points somebody to your writing itself, just like, so not maybe not like the auditory aspect of you as a performer. You're just right here with this person's writing, and you can say like, hey, this is really great writing. And now you can couple that with somebody can bring up their chapbook, because again, every time I chose somebody this, and like it's not even something I really recognized until I mean, I didn't necessarily recognize, because like you're doing it because you're just so excited about it, right? So I mean, I don't know, years ago, before we got married, I was like in Wisconsin for this like other this open mic that another artist friend that we both knew, she was we actually drove to Wisconsin together for the feature, because she was featuring at this show. And I remember being at this show, and then somebody, being like, what are you reading right now? And like the only book that I had on me was this chapbook. And I just remember the conversation being like there's very few artists that I can go on and on and on and on and on about. One of them is like Kanye. And then like just like legitimately, when I'm talking about this book, Doors, I think it's something, because you're not just remembering a book, you're remembering the experience. And so like that's the thing that you're excited about. Like I was like, oh my goodness, like you have no idea what these poems are going to do to you. Like you have no clue. Here, read this poem like right now. Like actually turn to page 28. Like that's where like the Guardian of Bicycling Mermaids is, I think. Like turn to page 28 and just like please read this book. Like please read this poem. And so like you're adding an additional kind of arm to your promotion, especially if you give a really great experience while you're in person. So you're giving another arm to your promotion, another dimension to that viewer and listener's experience.
Yeah. Cool. Just before we head out, guys, just a couple of quick reminders about things that we have happening. So first of all, we have a residency program that's going to be, again, from Friday, December 8th through Sunday, December 10th. We are still taking applications through October 31st. There's still a little bit of time left to get your applications in. This is for 2 women identifying poets, one of whom will receive a $200 stipend. Okay. So get your applications in. You can go to diversespoetry.com. And then also on Wednesdays, we do just kind of a weekly webinar, just talking about techniques for taking your writing and trying to devise ways to turn it into your own workshop, into your own course, or turn it into a video course. So we just talk about things like how to decide what your topic's going to be, what is it like working with venues, and what are some strategies you can use to promote it, and what are some of the tools or the equipment that you may need to run it. And these are completely free. And again, if you go to diversespoetry.com, you can register for that as well. Yeah. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Cool. All right.
I think.
So make your chapbooks. If you have questions for us, be sure to let us know. Let us know also how just your chapbooks go. If you already have chapbooks out, if you have other thoughts on the argument as well. Sending you off into the night. Question again, you can find us at diversespoetry.com. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Guys, I don't know. Is there a way for people to send us their chapbooks? I would love to do chapbook reviews. We should read them, and then we could just tell you guys what we think about chapbooks. That would be cool. That would be fun.
Yeah. If you want us to review your chapbook or something like that, send one our way.
Send it over.
Can do.
Just do it.
Our people talk with your people. Yeah.
Then I'll just talk to some random people. Just because I'm a friendly guy.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back to you. And we'll finish our conversation.
Yeah, it might be nice.
Yeah.
All right. You guys have a good night. Once more, my name is Jeff.
My name is Matthias.
We'll see you guys later. Have a good day, good night, good afternoon, guys. Thanks for watching Versus Live.